Minecraft Alpha and Beta served as simple survival sandbox games with no end goal in sight. Just build whatever you want forever, with the only things really getting in your way being a couple of enemies and a very limited block palette. There's been over a decade's worth of updates. Following this trail all the way back leads us to what may be one of the most pivotal points in the game's history. This is aiming to completely neglect the adventure update, but it's also adding in essential features that would get added in later to a beta version. Stuff that might have been added into Minecraft if the route of the adventure update had not been taken. Sort of a prolonged beta state.
Hello Bingus, I'm Chondo. 4 months ago, I made a video covering Minecraft's golden age and the community surrounding it. Through this, I mentioned that some people have gone out of their way to develop upon older versions of the game to create their ideal Minecraft experience. I included a few examples specifically, but there's one that seems to have been especially interesting as I received several comments asking for me to cover it. A month after that video, I retold the development and outcome of one of Minecraft's most critical updates, the Adventure Update, a set of changes that have become divisive today, as many think it thrust the game into a new direction that they did not agree with. If you want some extra context into the history of what we're about to cover, consider checking those out. But if you're all caught up, join me as we talk about one of the community's most ambitious projects, Minecraft Better Than Adventure. Before we get into its content, let's investigate that name. It may seem a bit brave to have such a definitive title, but there's a bit more history behind it, and it starts over 6 months before the Adventure Update. February 28, 2011 was an important date for Minecraft's creator, Notch. With a visit to Google, a couple of interviews, and a dinner with a huge gaming company, it was bound to be a busy day. However, he would share another meal that morning. During a breakfast meeting with one of his idols, for some reason, he made the decision, then and there, to implement pet dogs into Minecraft. So, with a couple updates in the weeks following, wolves would gradually be worked into the game's world. They would ultimately become the main feature of Minecraft Beta 1.4, so we'll call it the Wolves Update. It would release on March 31st. The same day, Minecraft Forums user Flowerchild would share their take on the changes, specifically the wolves. They have some criticism that is, in part, sadly still applicable today. Up to this point, I've chosen to blur out their profile picture, so if their words weren't clear enough, Flowerchild isn't too fond of wolves. The next day, we'd see another post from Flowerchild where they're doubling down on their previous takes and asking the community if they could come up with suggestions for worthwhile additions. Flowerchild would also make some suggestions of their own. They suggest that all these features together would require less effort to implement than wolves did, which is an assumption they back up with 15 years of game development. Oh yeah, and the name of this thread? Better Than Wolves. So after hearing out the community, Flowerchild would spend the next 5 days planning their next project, the Better Than Wolves mod. This mod was officially a total conversion, which is a term we've only recently started seeing more. The specific goal was to retain the original spirit of the game, which I assume they felt was lost with the recent updates. They preferred challenging survival gameplay that provided the player only basic tools, so that users were begged to optimize and develop them further. This is a sentiment heavily echoed in the Golden Age community. Sometimes less is more. Limitations inspire creativity. For some people, too many options can hinder the discovery aspect seen in some of the game's earliest versions. And this line is what is most important to us today. Better Than Wolves is a vision of what Minecraft could have been, designed by a very serious player for other like-minded individuals. This was a first for the modding community and the Minecraft community as a whole. For over a year at this point, players had been looking to one developer for their input to the game. But now, there was something else. Something that provided players with a different option that would only grow further from the original game as time went on. And that's all we're gonna say for this mod. After all, that's not what this video is about. But the concept and philosophy behind this mod is what's important to us today. An ambitious step away from the official game that quickly takes off into a full sprint to become something totally different. And it was also proof that this kind of thing was actually possible. Okay, now we're moving into information that I've already covered extensively in other videos, so I'll do my best to be brief and only tell you what you need to know. The Adventure Update started with Minecraft Beta 1.8 and concluded with the game's first official release version, 1.0.0. If the inclusion of wolves was seen as a detour from the original development path of the game, the Adventure Update paved a new road altogether. Many staple mechanics in modern Minecraft, like hunger, enchanting, potions, and much more, were all introduced in this update. But these features were different. A lot of them didn't feel as though they enhanced the experience that was already present, but rather that they offered something new entirely. Whereas Minecraft had incredibly light RPG elements prior, it was now leaning into those heavily. Well, heavily may be an exaggeration, but if you're looking at things through a lens of relativity, it's not that far of a stretch. There may not have been a skill tree and attributes, but there was leveling, NPCs, and a dragon. At this point in time, the community could look forward to an update adding in a few new blocks, or if they're lucky, a new mob. But so much that was so different, so suddenly, threw a few people off. We didn't see the full effects of this reception in that moment. Sure, some people expressed worry as to where the game was headed, but that's typically as far as it went. However, with a recent rise in the Golden Age community, and generally more interest in retro Minecraft, a new option was presented. What if someone were to take the version right before the Adventure Update and make something different, undoing all of the controversial changes? Maybe they could make something that renewed the spirit that Minecraft used to have, a vision into what the game could have been. Forums user SkyDecagogo had this idea and hit the ground running. On July 20th, 2021, they'd post to the forums announcing their total conversion mod for Minecraft Beta 1.7.3, Better Than Adventure. With three main inspirations, New Frontier Craft, Not So Secret Saturday, and of course, Better Than Wolves, the path forward was clear. All of these are big names, but I solely focused on Better Than Wolves because, from what I can tell, it was the first of its kind, and it also provided a nice naming convention. They'd specifically used the term fork to describe their goals. If you're not familiar, think of it as a fork in the road, only in the context of development. At this point, Minecraft unofficially split into two distinct pieces of software. Mojang did their thing, and now it's our turn. To double down on this philosophy, Better Than Adventure isn't released under your typical version numbers. The first release was not 0.0.1. Instead, it was Minecraft Beta 1.7.4. I see this as a very confident decision. It says that after a decade-long development hiatus, we're picking up right where we left off. For people who fell out of love with the game around this time, this will not only be familiar, but it'll be something new for the first time in years. So let's see if it lives up to its name. And to find that out, let's examine the differences in additions, features implemented during and after the Adventure Update, and what's on offer with Better Than Adventure. So let's start by covering the overlap, features that are present in both. Something that I wish was implemented into Minecraft earlier is creative mode. It can be fun to revisit the beta versions of the game, but the ability to fly around and build with no restrictions is lumped in with other features that I'm visiting these versions of the game specifically to take a break from. Wouldn't it be wonderful to fly around the world generation of Beta 1.7.3 instead of being forced to walk everywhere? Well, the Better Than Adventure team thought so, as now, creative mode is fully fleshed out, even offering a less limiting no-clip mechanic rather than traditional flight. But if you were in survival, a problem might come up. If you didn't use the wiki, how would you know just what to do? Well, Mojang recognized this and decided to add in a recipe book that unlocks further as the player discovers new materials. Better Than Adventure also offers this solution, and I personally think it works better in some ways. Instead of getting a pop-up to notify you of discovering something new, the recipes are instead always shown as silhouettes, so you can routinely check the book for new unlocks. I also like that this system still requires you to put materials in the crafting table rather than having it automated. It's convenient, but I personally always liked the manual method. Also, the height limit has been increased to 256, a change the official game wouldn't see until release 1.2.1. That's the end of our feature overlap, which leads us to a more general aspect of this mod, performance and optimization. This thing runs good. At least it does for me. When checking out other beta mods, or even official beta versions, the performance always feels subpar. Whether it crashes or it's just choppy, something is wrong. But here, I don't have that problem. Or at least I haven't yet. It feels smooth. Also, it's kind of crazy this mod manages to do that, because there is just way more going on here than there is in beta 1.7.3. There's lots of under the hood stuff and a ton of bug fixes, but there's also a shift in the appearance of the game, most notably bloom and color grading. It's very slight, but there's an optional setting to have bloom on, which puts a nice, soft glow around some brighter parts of your screen. I've never been one to play with shaders enabled, but I really like the effect that this gives off. It feels like a nice step up from vanilla graphics without going too far, which can also be said for the color grading. I'd been playing on my personal world for a while, until I noticed that the game almost looked like the Legacy console editions. More specifically, it looked like the gamma had been turned up, which was a setting that I think most people had turned up just a little bit in the console editions. Java, however, has only ever had a brightness setting, which behaves a little differently. Having high gamma just raises the brightness of every color on your screen, so some get a bit washed out, which sounds like a bad thing, but this mod turns it into a strength as it uses it in tandem with seasons. Every 7 in-game days, the world progresses, at least officially. Throughout this time, more gradual changes are being made within things like foliage color and precipitation. In the warm seasons, the game is more vibrant, but as we get into winter, that's when the color grading kicks in on the opposite spectrum, making the game feel cold and dark. It's a very subtle change in game, as it's taking place over hours, but every moment that you get to just sit and watch, you're really able to take it in. I think atmosphere is an overlooked strength of retro Minecraft. Whether intentional or not, the game delivered the player a very specific and consistent tone. I personally think that was lost a bit as time went on. With the modern game, I would never stop and watch the snow fall on a cold winter's night, because the game doesn't seem to put up a good argument as to why I should. But here, it just feels natural. And while it's not a season, the Nether offers a very distinct atmosphere as well. It's warm and it's dark. All the lighting is a very harsh red. It shocked me at first, to be honest, but with time it grew on me, and it added a little bit of life to the Nether without overcrowding it. Let's get into more individual additions. First, by understanding what is not present. There's no villages, no sprinting, no experience, no enchanting, no potions, no end, no fortresses, and more. But it offers some pretty substantial alternatives. For instance, enchantments have now been split up between tool tiers. Diamond tools now have an effect comparable to efficiency, gold tools have silk touch, and steel tools have very high durability, substituting for unbreaking. And I guess while we're here, steel is now the final tier of tools and armor, serving as a use for excess iron. Speaking of armor, the same rules apply here as well. Enchantments are done away with in favor of 4 distinct armor types: combat, blast, fall, and fire. Think of these as protection, blast protection, feather falling, and fire protection. Each piece of armor gets different levels in each. Leather armor is specialized towards fall damage, iron and gold are all-around choices, diamond gives fire protection, chainmail gives combat protection, and steel gives blast protection. I think these differences in tool and armor tiers are very refreshing, and it gives the player more options for different scenarios. But in my experience, the best part was being able to consistently gather and use steel, and just be able to settle down and build from that point. I didn't have to do any lengthy experience grinding or villager trading to get a usable set of tools. I just did what the game hinted at through the recipe book. And when I did get to that point, it's not like I was just done. While these are technically the final tier of equipment, they don't feel overpowered. There are other tools and armor that are better in other situations, so I have a reason to revisit them down the road. I mentioned building, so I'd like to talk about that just a bit. There's a lot more blocks here. More stone types, more bricks, slabs, stairs, and even some cool changes, like glass panes instead being glass trapdoors, which serve mostly the same purpose while also offering something new. There's also more redstone blocks and even fully customizable flags. These are all great changes, but there is one thing that I'm a bit more indifferent towards. If you watched my Golden Age Minecraft video, you may recall that I constructed my own mod pack with my own data packs. that turn the modern game into a more beta-esque experience. Within this, I changed crafting recipes so that every log made oak planks. It's just a personal preference, but I always really liked the aesthetic of cobblestone and wood houses, specifically in the context of retro Minecraft. It's probably because of nostalgia, which I'm not afraid to admit. But here, there are many wood types. 17 including the unpainted variety. The way they're implemented is admittedly pretty cool though, as some logs craft the colored planks, but they can also always just be dyed a different color. And to be honest, that's the only complaint I have for this mod, and I could just not use them. Which, to be honest, I couldn't even fully commit to. As much as I dislike their inclusion in other beta mods, I think they're done really well here, to the point where I might be warming up to them. So not even really a complaint. I also mentioned a similar distaste for how the modern game handles stone variants like andesite, diorite, and granite. That comes mostly from an inventory management thing, which is part of a way larger issue. So my preference was to have all those drop regular cobblestone so that mining wouldn't fill my inventory so quick. This mod features stone types as well, but I think they're much more interesting. They spawn depending on the environment, so you don't have to deal with random deposits of another stone type as you're strip mining. And they can actually be turned into some really nice building blocks. Even lapis gets the chance to become a bit more useful with blue bricks. There is a lot more to this mod, including a hand cannon that can launch you in the air. Also, it seemingly does best if you crouch and jump at the same time, but I'm not saying anything. But I don't want to spoil all the surprises. Even while recording footage for this video, I found a lot of really cool stuff that I had no idea was in the game. So I highly suggest, if you're even slightly interested, go ahead and check this out. I, as well as many others, have fallen out a bit with modern Minecraft updates. Sure, some features are still really cool, but looking forward to them and actually anticipating them just isn't the same. Maybe it's just burnout, or maybe it's a difference in how these additions are revealed or announced, but they just don't hit the same. And you know what? That's okay. They don't have to. Things can change and they don't have to stay the same. Because until I feel excited again for the official game, if I ever even do, I have this mod to look forward to. And I don't think it should ever come down to choosing between this project and the official game. I personally have ongoing worlds on both. At this point, they're two different enough experiences that stand out on their own, and while they offer the player something different, it's always enjoyable. It's totally up to personal preference, but this is one of the few total conversion beta mods that was really able to draw me in right from the start. When I loaded into the world and saw the colors of the grass and the water and the bloom, I knew that this was different. With a ton of quality of life improvements and engaging additions, it takes the player back to a point in time that they may not have spent as much time in as they would have liked to. Better Than Adventure handles itself in a way that makes one thing very clear. They're not asking if the mod is better than the adventure update. There's no question mark in the title. They're running with the assumption that it already is. Not to say that they're being boastful, they just know that they are making something great. If you liked this video, please consider liking the video. If you especially liked it, please consider subscribing. At the time of filming, I just recently hit 9,000 subscribers. Every milestone feels more and more surreal, so every bit of support you all have given me means the world. And while I'm thanking you, thanks to those that suggested I review this mod. It's not a style of coverage that I'm very familiar with, so I hope it turned out okay. And who knows, if you guys want more Better Than Adventure content, I do have a second channel, and I think a flashy new playthrough would look pretty nice on it. So if there's any kind of interest in that kind of thing, please let me know. And to continue the appreciation, thank you to the Better Than Adventure team. You guys are making something that is wonderful and a lot of people love. And of course, thank you for watching.